Welcome to the Evolution Show. I'm Johan Landgren. I hope you're great. Over the last couple of years, I've had the privilege to have many inspiring guests here on the Evolution Show, with everything from the founders of Einride, a company developing self-driving electric trucks without even a cabin, to several conversations with the CEO and founder of one of the most talked about electric plane developers in the world, Heart Aerospace, as well as many other inspiring leaders in sustainable tech. And today we have another really inspiring guest on the show, a world leader in electrifying large vessels on the sea. Join me for a conversation with the CEO and founder of the Swedish company Echandia to learn more about really cool zero-emission ships like high-speed catamarans. I think you will enjoy this conversation, and if you like the content, help support the show with a thumbs up and consider subscribing. As always, stay ahead of the curve and stay electric. This is the Evolution Show. Welcome to the Evolution Show, Magnus Eriksson.
Thank you, Johan. Thank you for inviting me today.
Yeah, I've really been looking forward to this episode. You're a company, you're the founder of and CEO of Echandia, a Swedish startup, and you have a background as a naval architect, and you have been working on Swedish submarines for quite a while before you founded Echandia. So perhaps you could tell us a little bit about your background and what led to the foundation of Echandia.
Sure, absolutely. I'm a naval architect, been working with Swedish submarine development programs for about 20 years in various positions, everything spanning from R&D projects to acquisition projects of new submarine programs, etc., etc. And in my early days, I was working as a hydrodynamic specialist and developing propulsion systems, propeller units, and this and that. And I was rewarded with a few patents related to torpedo propulsion, actually, and that was the starting point of Echandia. So in the early days in Echandia, we developed electric propulsion units called pod motors with integrated propeller units. So that was the starting point, and I started developing those electric drive units in parallel with my submarine work. And also at the early days, the intention was to build pleasure boats at the time, electric, energy-efficient pleasure boats with these propulsion units. And we started off at that end. The market wasn't ready or mature at all at that point. So we quickly moved on to pure commercial applications. So in 2014, we launched the first supercharged electric vessel in Stockholm with these pod units installed on that vessel. And we've been working with different projects ever since then. And a little bit on the history of Echandia is that as of 2018, we decided to redefine the scope of supply. Previously, we were doing complete vessel design, electric drive units, charging stations, even complete electric vessels. But in 2018, we decided that we shall only supply the energy systems for electric propulsion. So for us, that means supplying LTO battery systems and or in combination with maritime fuel cell systems that we're now developing. Yeah. So that's where we are right now.
Yeah. And we'll come back to the batteries soon and fuel cells. But Echandia has reached a number of milestones the last couple of years. We could mention, of course, winning the prestigious award here in Sweden, the E-Prize. Which is, for people who don't know it, it's one of Sweden's perhaps biggest, largest awards for climate innovation. And I thought we could start with the very inspiring catamaran that you have announced that it will be introduced here in Sweden, which will be the first one to operate in the world, actually, a high-speed catamaran in the Swedish archipelago outside in Stockholm area. So perhaps you could start to tell us a little bit about this really cool catamaran.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's our first real project, and we're going to install 1.2 megawatt of fuel cell power into what will be the fastest hydrogen-driven or fuel cell-driven passenger ferry in the world. there are a handful of other hydrogen or fuel cell projects out there in the world, but this one will be the fastest, and it will be operating outside of Stockholm sometime starting in mid or end 2023.
Yeah, super interesting. And if we look closer at this catamaran, it's a zero emission catamaran, and it will run on Echandia's batteries and fuel cell technology, if I understand it correctly. And I noticed that it has an extensive solar roof and a number of solar panels on top of it. So I'm just curious, because I'm really into solar panels and so on as well. So I just wonder, could you say anything about how much power it would provide on a daily basis or per trip or something like that?
It's only to cover minor consumption on board while moored. Since total propulsion power will be over 1 megawatt, those solar panels will not suffice to cover the propulsion alone, obviously. So we will only for low level maintenance charging of the batteries.
Okay, yeah. And the catamaran, it looks really sleek, and it will be operational, I understand it, in Stockholm archipelago in 2023.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about its range with the batteries and the fuel cells, and perhaps something about how you're planning to charge it?
Yeah. Well, first of all, this is a fuel cell battery hybrid, where the fuel cells is the main energy system, and the energy feeding the fuel cell is hydrogen stored in compressed gas in tanks on board. The battery in this installation is not providing the energy for high-speed operations, only for being a buffer for the fuel cell system. So stiffening up the electrical grid on board and making sure to absorb and deliver peak powers on board. So typically you will operate full days of operation, and this type of vessel is not being recharged in the sense an EV is being recharged, but you refuel with hydrogen. So you have a dispenser unit and you actually fill it up with gas at the end of the day to be able to operate for the full day operation the next day.
I didn't know that it could operate the whole day. That's quite amazing, actually.
Yeah. So this is a design optimization, because it's quite heavy, this gas storage installation. So depending on routes and the frequency of departure, etc., you can allow for having an intermediate top-up at lunchtime, where it's typically not so intense for commuter traffic. So it's a optimization topic, actually, and this is depending on which route, it can possibly operate the full day, or for longer, different type of routes, you have to actually do it.
How many passenger will you have on this? It's quite big, this catamaran.
Yeah, it's a 100-passenger vessel.
Yeah.
Vessel details, specific details about the vessel as such, I must refer to Green City Ferries, who is actually designing the vessel. Yeah. So Echandia's role is to supply the battery and fuel cell solution to this vessel alone. So that's the level of responsibility we have in that project.
Yeah. And obviously, we have to mention another milestone if we move on to another part of your business. You have now you won a major contract for a whole fleet of these kind of zero-emission ships in India. Can you tell us about that? Something about that project?
It's a really cool infrastructure establishment, I should say. It's for the city of Kochi in the state of Kerala in southwest India, where they're requiring almost 100 electric ships to be integrated with the metro system. So this is an integrated transport system where they're connecting all the waterways around the city with the metro rail system. And it's part of a larger commuter system, infrastructure system, in where all these 88 vessels will be operating on a timetable, and they will have distributed charging stations to recharge the batteries on board. So it's a massive deployment. And in the first phase, we have now supplied batteries for the 23 first vessels, and the next phase includes 55 more vessels, ranging between 100 passenger boats to 50 passenger boats. So slightly smallish boats, but very cool. And it's the first project of this kind in India, and India as a whole is very interesting as a market for us. So we will see more of these type of deployments in other places in India as we go along.
Yeah, really super inspiring, really cool. Just for transparency, I came to learn about Echandia about a year ago when an investor friend of mine told me about the company and said you should really look into this. And I had seen some news about you and so on. Then I went into this thought process about you, and yeah, I also invested in your company. So for people should always know that when I speak about a company, if I invest or not. Yeah. If I even invested, and I really like what you do, obviously. Recently you raised money, and you had an investor round. And can you tell us a little bit about the money that you raised? I mean, what will it be used for?
It's growth capital, typically, where we have dividing the capital and the use of proceeds in 3 areas, you can say roughly. One third goes typically to product development and primarily for fuel cell development, which is rather capital intense. Another third goes for expansion on the commercial side, for marketing and sales efforts, both in terms of having boots on the ground in various key regions, such as the UK, Denmark, Norway, Italy. So we have regional presence in those local markets, but also digital presence. We're combining the old-fashioned marketing and sales techniques with a lot of digital awareness and communication in digital channels, which also requires resources. And then the last third part is for working capital for supplying our projects. When you have long-term delivery projects, you buy material up front, but you don't get paid until later on in the project, and that requires certain project funding. We're taking the business onwards from here and preparing the company to go on the Stockholm Stock Exchange later on this year. So to further expand the business and have more readily available funding for growth capital. So that's the idea right now.
Yeah, really cool. And just for people, obviously, they want to know more about the technology. So let's talk a little bit about that. You're pioneering so-called heavy-duty LTO batteries. And for those unfamiliar with this technology, can you tell us a little bit about what's LTO batteries if you compare it to others, for example?
Yeah, the difference with our battery chemistry is that we have introduced together with Toshiba in Japan this LTO type cell, and what it means is that we have titanium as part of the anode material, and by doing so we get certain key benefits compared to all the other lithium type chemistries. One is that we have market leading power absorption capacity or power delivery capacity, meaning that we can recharge the battery in the fastest manner, and we can then deliver power at the highest rate as well, which means that specifically where high powers are required, we have market leading performance. Another very important topic is the safety aspects related to the choice of batteries, where the LTO chemistry is typically regarded as the safest lithium chemistry available. And we're the only business in the maritime space who withholds a type approval for these type of LTO batteries. The other aspect is the long-term reliability and durability in the battery system. Typically, our customers are using their boats. They often have a concession to operate a boat on a specific route for, say, up to 12 years. And they don't want to replace the batteries during that contractual concession time. So that's a typical customer requirement that the battery system shall last for 12 years. We have, in those type of applications, we're excelling in terms of performance and price, specifically if you have a lot of repetitive charging events in a day. So that typically defines what we call the heavy duty application.
Yeah.
High power, many charging events a day, and then long-term warranty terms and conditions.
Yeah, I was going to say that because obviously people think that maybe titanium, I mean, it's obviously more expensive in the initial upfront cost to invest in these kind of batteries. But you're also saying that it will provide a better, a longer life, operational life, and a longer guarantee also.
Yeah, but that's true. But it's what has been typically the historical opinions about LTO is that it's the very interesting technology, but it has typically historically had two drawbacks. One is price and one is weight. And we have addressed the price and weight issue, the weight issue in our system design. So we are, in many cases, actually on project level, a smaller battery system compared to the competing solution, because we don't need to oversize our battery to withstand these 10 years in operation or whatever it may be, while the competition needs to have a certain oversized buffer to be able to be within the requirements. So comparing on specification level, price and weight, LTO is heavier and more expensive. But when comparing on project level, we can, relatively speaking, deliver a smaller battery unit at a lower cost, lower weight, and a lower volume than the competition. That is in those cases where you have really tough requirements. If it's a mild application where you typically maybe just have one overnight charge event per day, then our solution may be a little bit gold-plated.
Yeah, and why, as you say, the project sort of, I mean, is it combining fuel cells and batteries that makes these batteries, you know, smaller in size, comparable? Is that the kind of the secret sauce here?
Yeah, that's a different topic. What I was just referring to right now is comparing different battery solutions to each other for a given project, against a given requirement specification. But when also including fuel cells into the equation, then we have even a better proposition, because since we're the only company in the world supplying these type of LTO batteries that typically excel in delivering high power and then combining with a lot of energy on the fuel cell side, that combination is excellent, because then the role of the battery is only to supply peak powers, short duration of time, but high power output. And yet again, then we can, relatively speaking, compare with any other vendor who wants to combine batteries and fuel cells, the battery portion is relatively much smaller. And on the fuel cell side, we're developing the fuel cell system to be having market-leading efficiency, which is another different aspect in terms of optimizing the overall cost. The fuel cell system is relatively costly, but that is relatively small compared to your energy costs. When operating a vessel 24-hour a day, you will have, your energy bill will be substantial. So we are targeting that part of the market where we can optimize on total cost of ownership by reducing the energy bill, basically.
Yeah, and if we're, you know, focus a little bit on the fuel cells, you have, you're developing fuel cells now in Canada. You have a research team there. So could you tell us a little bit about the process right now and where you are, and when we can perhaps see the fuel cells in your ships?
Absolutely, yeah. We've been sort of holding off before we decided to start investing into this development. We've been working with design projects for a number of years, including fuel cells. But the market hasn't really picked up yet, or hadn't at the time. But last year, we did another round of validating whether it's time now to take a position in this market in terms of maritime fuel cells. And we decided now it's a good timing. So let's now starting actually dedicating resources to this. And we have partners in Canada, so we've set up a joint development and production facility in Eastern Canada. So we have a small team there, engineering team, that are right now full on with the prototype development. And this summer, we're starting in the lab over there, testing our first 300 kilowatt fuel cell system. And then later on this autumn, finalizing with the type approval from the classification societies. So we'll do, hopefully at the end of the year, we will have a type approved fuel cell system. And we're doing market introduction in a rather soft way. This Stockholm project is a type of first pilot project for us, and we will seek out similar projects like that. And for the foreseeable future, the market will be like that. It will be a number of pilots, and I think it will take a few years before there's a broader acceptance of fuel cells, but that it will come. I'm 100% convinced, but it's just a matter of how fast will the market develop.
And I totally agree. I've been, to be honest, very skeptical about hydrogen in general because of the this challenge having produce hydrogen with renewables. But of course, this is different in different markets. In Sweden, we have a huge advantage of having an energy mix that makes it possible to generate. When you have surplus of power, we could generate hydrogen instead of exporting our power, for example. That's one way. And I've always thought that in larger vessels, like in the marine sector, as you are operating in, and perhaps for very, very large trucks and so on, and that this is a no-brainer, obviously, with hydrogen. But for cars and other things, smaller sizes, I have always said that the power you can generate in terms of power efficiency in an electric motor and a battery, you can never compete with that when you have a smaller size in short term, because as you know, it's just a matter of physics. But as soon as you make it larger, this whole other ball game. And then you have the advantage.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a matter of what current technology can allow. And even moving into fuel cells and compressed hydrogen, that is not sufficient enough for the larger ships. So there's still a need for further technical development to accommodate for what we call true zero emission propulsion for even the larger vessels. But it's clearly going to be a business case for fuel cells. Just referring to what EU has proposed in their framework for what they call Fit for 55, they have a number of initiatives, including the shipping segment or sector, where it will be so costly for a ship operator using diesels that the business case will be completely different for fuel cells going forward. And this will, in this proposal, the implementation of the tax redistribution system is going to start being implemented in 2023 and fully implemented by 2026. So the timeline is not it's not long term, it's actually short term. So this will be a huge market driver for us, both for batteries and fuel cells.
And of course, then people wonder, how are you going to build these ships? And you have a key partner, and that's Damen, and that's a major shipbuilder. And can you tell us a little bit about this partnership and its role of making the electric ships come to life? So to speak?
No, Damen is a repetitive customer of us, and they represent the biggest, or I say, global dominant player, a shipbuilding group based in the Netherlands, but they have about 40 shipyards around the world. Specifically ranging from workboats up to mid-size vessels. Typically what you see in the European fleet, you have coastal ships, you have workboats, tugboats, passenger vessels, those type, and offshore supply vessels. That's the prime market for us. I have a specific collaboration with them on the tugboat market, and where Damen represents 50% of the world market for tugboats. And we just recently delivered the first full-sized electric tug for a customer in New Zealand, for Port of Auckland. So that's really exciting. And we hope that niche or that application as such will grow rapidly, because harbor tugs is an obvious candidate to have as an electrification candidate with batteries to start with, and possibly also fuel cells for larger tugs that also operate out at sea. So very interesting application. And there are so many thousands of tugboats out there in the world. So
Yeah, I mentioned this for my friend and Robert, and he said also that just looking at tugboats, it's a huge market. So yeah. And but Echandia, you have installed battery technology, as we mentioned, in tugboats and also in 7 battery-driven ferries in Denmark. And I thought we should talk a little bit about that, because this is a really cool and really important, I think, project. What can you say about the project so far, and perhaps something you mentioned already that you will use in terms of the fuel cells? Then you will be able to run them all day. But if you only have like this, I guess, a pure battery operation, how does this work?
This is an example where you have an integrated view on things, where you have a fleet of vessels operating in a very tight timetable. The establishment in Copenhagen consists of 7 vessels and 3 charging stations, automatic charging stations, where the vessel goes in and automatically docks to the charging station. So the vessel is automatically connected to the pier and recharges the vessel on these locations where the charging stations are. And it's done in a time frame of typically 5, 6, 7 minutes. While passengers go off, they recharge the vessel. It automatically disconnects and continues in its timetable. So, and it does repetitively like this 16, 17 hours a day, 1 recharging event per hour. And then it operates like that year out. And then in this case, we have a design life of these batteries spanning up to 12 years, I think, in this type of application. And this particular project was also something that we got an award for last autumn. In the Maritime Awards, we, together with Damen Shipyards, won a prize called Ship of the Year Awards in 2021, which was credit to all suppliers involved and Damen, who were the lead, of course, building these boats.
Yeah, and can you just mention, in Norway, they already have, they're transporting now from different coastal harbors on the west coast in Norway already, with a fully electric ship, a small size or medium-sized kind of container-like ship.
Yes.
So this is already, on the way.
Yeah, and I assume you're referring to this Yara Birkeland, which is also the intended autonomous container ship. So that's another development, autonomous operations of ships, which is really cool. But that's an area that we're not directly involved in, because we're only supplying the energy systems to these type of ships. And then our customer is typically responsible for the autonomous development. But it's many different interesting and exciting developments ongoing, of course. And we have a lot of things on the energy side in terms of further expanding energy capacity, both on the battery side, but also on what shall be the strategic hydrogen carrier for the future. How can we increase the energy density in the energy storage to the fuel cells, in where we do believe ammonia will play a strategic role in the future. So we're looking into how can we adopt to that source of energy, and how can we convert that in a fuel cell in a very efficient way. So that's an example of a long-term development that we're involved in. So we have short to mid to long-term engagements with a vision to be a market leader in supplying these type of zero-emission solutions for the maritime industry.
And just to round up, I mean, if you look ahead a little bit, 3 to 5 years ahead in the future, could you say anything about where do you see the biggest market for you, or do you have several markets? How do you look at this?
Yeah, what we see different segments now increasing in importance to us, and typically it goes in the size of ship, actually. So as I said previously, historically it's been coastal or city passenger ferries, workboats, etc., but now growing into larger vessels, ro-ro pucks, and a new possible segment for us is the Navy segment, for Navy applications or military applications, where our LTO batteries are unique in terms of being able to meet those type of requirements, safety, durability, etc. And the whole European scene will dominate for us, I think, in terms of what all these new regulations will add as drivers for our development, and also business model development, how to include financial arrangements, leasing setups for customers to be able to convert their boats to electric propulsion. So both technical development, but also commercial/business development topics it will be a dynamic playing field in the next few years.
Yeah. It's really exciting to follow your progress with your company, and that the marine sector really needs to be electrified. So I think this is a huge, opportunity, as well as a inspiration to see you progress here. And I hope many more will follow. But for people interested to learn more about what you do at Echandia, how can they contact you or follow your work?
Yeah, well, we have online presence, of course, LinkedIn, and if someone wants to have direct contact, just contact me through LinkedIn, email, or through our website. So that's one channel to get hold of me, and I'm happy to answer any questions coming up.
Yeah, thank you so much, Magnus. This was a really interesting conversation, and as I said, I will follow you, and maybe you can come back to give us an update later when you have, at a later time.
Yes, absolutely, Johan. I'm happy to. Thank you for inviting me today.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. I feel more hopeful that we will see many more zero-emission ships the coming years. Everything from small ones to large ships for freight, and, of course, passenger ferries like the ones Echandia has made possible already in operations in Denmark. But what do you think about the future of electric and zero-emission ships? And what do you think about Echandia's tech? Share what you think in the comment section below. And before you go, if you want to support the show, we really appreciate a thumbs up. And consider subscribing. Up next is a guest several of you have asked me to invite back to the Evolution Show. Joakim Byström, the CEO and founder of Absolicon, one of the world's most exciting and promising solar tech companies. So stick around for that. You don't want to miss that episode. As always, stay ahead of the curve and stay electric.